Hi, my lovely friends, and this is my last video of the day. As you can tell, it's evening, but today I am reading from chapter 11 of this particular book, The Marriage of Necessity, which is a standalone arranged marriage series that is in the romance genre. So, if you want to listen to the other chapters, I will put a playlist up here for you, and it will also show up on the end screen when you get that far. But in the meantime, let's pull up our screen and start from chapter 11. If you remember from the previous chapters, Jasper has just been pulled out of the sea after swimming towards the whales to save them. Chapter 11. Duncan's cross with me, and the crew that were on the deck think that I am a creature sent straight from the underworld to lead you on a path of destruction. Avalon looked over at where his husband was sitting on his small two-seater. They were in his suite. Jasper was dry and dressed in warm clothing, though those were the first words he'd said since Avalon pulled him from the sea. Pouring the coffee Avalon had ordered, he took the 2 cups over to where Jasper was sitting and took the space beside him, handing over the cup, thinking about what to say. Remembering his own words about honesty, he said bluntly, "Duncan thought you'd gone flying off the ship in a misguided effort to free me from a marriage to someone with an eye patch." Jasper was clearly thinking about his words. "That wasn't my original intention. I just couldn't let anyone harm those creatures, especially when they didn't mean any harm. And then I did think about it after, when I was in the water and realized I couldn't breathe." Jasper looked down at his cup. Avalon was struck by how slender his husband's hands were. "My magic, or maybe it was the creatures around me, they reminded me that you'd suffered loss before, and it would be cruel for you to go through that twice in a lifetime, especially when neither case was through fault of your own." Avalon scratched at a dry spot on his face. He was still carrying the remains of salt spray on his skin from being in the longboat and then holding Jasper's wet and cold body. He'd been focused on taking care of Jasper once they reached the ship and hadn't had a chance to wash. "Thank you, I think. You didn't go jumping over the railing to end your life, though, I'm sure of it." "Not intentionally, no. Thank you for believing that of me, at least." The small, quick smile Jasper gave him warmed Avalon's insides. "It's not easy living as I do, knowing the truth of how people perceive me. Growing up, I always used to wonder how people could be so polite on the outside, yet harbor such intense feeling inside. Part of that is societal upbringing." Avalon relaxed back in the seat, his arm along the back of it, not touching Jasper, but close, his other hand cradling his coffee. "I've always thought that people who don't have any ranking are the happiest in so many ways, or at least more honest. They don't care how they're perceived by others. They just get on with living their lives. The rest of us have to set an example." Avalon chuckled. "Not that the common folk pay any attention to the examples we're supposedly setting. They get along perfectly fine without us." Jasper smiled again and nodded, but his expression quickly turned serious. "Being with me isn't going to be easy on you," he said quietly, his gaze fixed on his cup. "I never dreamed. What happened tonight I thought it was a dream, and yet, as much as my insides were so jumbled and happy, because being among those fascinating creatures was the very best experience of my life, I'm almost also aware of how my reckless actions, because of creatures no less, will not be seen in a positive light by the men you command. He looked up, and Avalon knew what was coming. As your friend, and as someone whose magic thinks kindly of you, I do believe you should use my actions this night to invoke the dissolution clause in our marriage contract. There is none that would condemn you, and I swear, as soon as I find somewhere safe to be, I will notify my mother and assure her your actions were purely a result of my untenable behavior. Avalon grinned. He knew that wasn't what Jasper was expecting, but he couldn't help himself. I do realize we've barely known each other a week, but do you think there will come a time anytime soon where you might be working on ways to stay married to me instead of looking for excuses to get out of it? I don't understand. The one eye Jasper had uncovered flew open, and he looked at Avalon, the shock unmistakable. There is no way in any country, in any part of the known world, that my swim tonight with creatures that could have harmed the ship would be considered acceptable behavior for the crown prince consort of a respected country. Not even the pirates would take me if they knew of my magic, and how just by falling asleep I caused the disturbance this evening. Avalon, please, if anyone had a reason to evoke the cause, it would be you. Taking a large sip of his coffee, Avalon put his cup down on the closest table and reached for Jasper's free hand. I find myself quite taken with you, he said, keeping his voice low. He really didn't want to spook his husband, nor have him feel uncomfortable in any way, although the urge to pull the frail man into his arms was strong. Admittedly, there might be some gossip once others learn of your magic, but none would dare say anything to your face or mine. I confess, what happened this evening has raised some questions I'd like answers to as well. But giving up on our marriage is the last thing I'm thinking about. He paused for a moment and then added, even if that option was possible, which it isn't, and before you get the wrong idea, that was my choice too, and something I am happy about. Jasper wasn't a silly man. Avalon could almost see him decoding the words, connecting the dots, and coming to a logical conclusion. You signed away your right to a dissolution clause. I did, the same as you did. Despite my ranking higher in social circles than yourself, I wanted us to come into this marriage as close to equal as possible. I should berate you. Jasper looked out of the porthole, not that he could see a lot, as it was well past midnight. And yet I find my heart gladdened by your words. I'm not sure what that says about me. That you're a man looking for a connection, just like I was, when neither one of us knew it, Avalon suggested. That it's possible two misfits can find each other in the chaos of life as we know it and come to some accord. My magic does like you, Jasper admitted, which made Avalon smile all over again, because he already knew Jasper's magic was the core of the man himself and not a separate entity. And you did, at great risk to your own person, row towards a pod of whales in the dark with no thought of your own safety to pull me from the water. I trusted you wouldn't let your creatures hurt me, Avalon said simply. But tell me, what was it like swimming amongst so many of our sea creatures? Could you commune with them at all? How did you know how to swim if you'd never done it before? Putting down his coffee mug, Jasper leaned back, mimicking Avalon's pose, their hands still joined. I'm sure the fish were laughing at me, he started. They didn't communicate in words as such, but... Avalon couldn't stop smiling as he listened to his husband sharing the events from his own perspective. It was clearly an epic experience for his non-swimming husband. Yes, Avalon was tired. His shoulders were still complaining about the rowing, and he knew Jasper would need more sleep as well. But he wanted to savor a quiet moment, a quiet shared moment with the man he was coming to have feelings for. Chapter 12. They slept together, not in the carnal sense or in any intimate way beyond one man holding another for comfort all night. But after Jasper had talked himself hoarse, and with Avalon yawning and trying not to show it, it was Avalon who suggested that if Jasper shared his bed, he might not be inclined to dream. It was clear Avalon hoped doing that would allow them both to get a decent night's sleep, at least for a few hours. Jasper found himself unwilling to leave Avalon's company for reasons he wasn't ready to examine, and was happy enough to join Avalon on his huge bed. To his surprise, his sleep was dream-free. He thought it'd be difficult, having never shared his sleeping space with anyone in any way before. But there was something comforting about Avalon's bulk, and his calm nature soothed Jasper in ways even his mother had never been able to. The fact that Avalon was happy to touch him with affection, didn't consider him dirty or despoiled in any way, went a long way to easing any discomfort Jasper imagined he would feel. Those feelings of comfort and calmness extended into the next morning. When one of the crew turned up with their breakfast, Avalon behaved as if it was a perfectly normal thing for his husband to be sharing his quarters. They broke their fast alone, as they had typically done since Jasper had arrived on the ship. There wasn't a lot of conversation, but Jasper's magic let him know Avalon was quietly pleased that he'd stayed the night, and that settled something deep inside of him. They didn't make it to the deck the way they typically would have done, though. Duncan, still bristling with something Jasper couldn't decipher, was waiting outside of Avalon's cabin door when they went to leave. Merlin was with him. We need to talk, all of us. Duncan didn't even wait for a response, but led the way to the smaller stateroom. Avalon didn't seem concerned. In fact, he made a point of ensuring Jasper was comfortable before taking the seat next to him, a half smirk on his face. Speak freely, Avalon waved his hand at Duncan. I understand you feel you have a lot to say now the events of the night have been successfully resolved. A lot to say? Duncan hadn't sat down, although Merlin had, and Jasper noticed the apologetic look sent his way from the quieter man. Do you have any idea the amount of trouble you caused last night? Are you speaking generally, or do you have something specific that you're upset about? Jasper appreciated Avalon's continued calmness, although he could tell Duncan didn't. If anything, it seemed to infuriate the man even more. All right. I can see what you're doing here, sire. Duncan started to pace. You want me to itemize every infringement. I can do that. How about we start with the fact an entire ocean full of sea creatures turned up to admire the ship, simply because the consort dreamed about it. Then there's the little matter of that same consort jumping overboard. The same man who could not swim, But did he die like anyone else would in that position? No, apparently not. Then, to make things worse, you decided to go after him in a longboat in the middle of the night, putting your person at great risk. And before you give me some rubbish about how there was nothing there that might have hurt you, there were freaking whales circling the ship, and you didn't give a crap about any of that. Oh no, you went off to play the hero, saving a man who by all accounts should have already been dead. Avalon's hand was heavy on Jasper's shoulder, which had to have been an instinctive act of comfort, because with the things Duncan was yelling, it was as if the man was seriously annoyed because Jasper was still alive. Jasper wanted to shrink into his chair as the weight of Duncan's disapproval hit him. Avalon tried to deflect that focus. And yet, despite your concern, my consort and I are both sitting here in perfectly good health. Jasper even managed to get some more sleep, which we can all agree is a positive. For now, Duncan swirled around, waving his arms in a way Jasper could only describe as threatening. His magic stirred. The crew are going crazy. They claim the consort has been sent by the devil himself or is completely insane. What type of a person jumps into the water to save sea creatures that pose a danger to all sea-going vessels everywhere? The sea is their home. Jasper forced the words out even as he inwardly cringed at Duncan's tirade. Those are intelligent creatures who care when humans have accidents in their waters. I could feel the sadness the whales felt at the idea of ships sinking in storms and things like that. Do you see what I mean? That's crazy talk. Duncan pointed at Avalon, but then his finger moved in Jasper's direction. What are you? Because you sure as hell aren't human. Duncan! Merlin and Avalon yelled in unison. No, I demand to know. Duncan edged closer, and Jasper's magic started to crackle along his skin. You sway our prince with some hard luck story about being abducted and injured in such a traumatic way you lost an eye because of it. The Crown Prince of Sijan is known throughout the world for being a caring man. Did you craft your story specifically, knowing our prince would be intrigued enough to want to save you from yourself? Was this all a devious plot to trap him into marriage so you could what? Take over Sijan? Is the king in danger? Or your husband? I bet you haven't even lost your eye at all. You have no other scars anywhere anyone can see. What the hell are you? Don't touch me, Jasper said quickly, pressing back in his chair as Duncan loomed over him. Don't you dare. I dare to expose your falsehood for what it is. Duncan's hand flashed towards him, ripping Jasper's eye patch off of his face as Jasper's magic surged forward. Jasper cried out, both scared and desperate to hold on his magic in. But the humiliation of having his injury exposed, combined with his intense fear at the way Duncan was acting, he didn't have a chance to hold anything back. A bright light flew from his eye socket, hitting Duncan in the chest and sending him flying back until he crashed on the floor, Jasper's eye patch still clutched in his fingers. Jasper hunched over, covering his face with his hands, trembling with shame and anger, because Duncan had seen. Jasper had no idea what he'd seen exactly, but Duncan had seen enough to leave his mouth hanging open, his eyes wide with shock. Chapter 13. How dare you treat the consort in that matter? That is a hanging offence. Avalon was on his feet in an instant, crossing the distance between himself and his prone friend. You have massively overstepped the bounds of our friendship. I could punch you, I'm so angry right now. He bent over, tugging the torn remains of Jasper's eye patch from Duncan's fingers. Are you pleased with yourself? Did you see the proof you needed for yourself? He's not human. Duncan's hand shook as he pointed in Jasper's direction. He can't be. His face, under the patch, the eye. I swear I saw demons. For a moment, Avalon was confused, and then he remembered. The same thing his brother Luigi saw when he demanded to see, because he was an asshole too. Jasper's magic adapts the vision of his eye to the beholder. Jasper, my husband, I am so sorry, but could you look up at me for a moment? Avalon was so sure Jasper would refuse. The man had been yelled at and humiliated, and Avalon imagined he could feel that pain in his own soul. He had never dreamed in a million years that Duncan would go so far as to physically assault his husband, which was why he wasn't fast enough to stop him. But he knew, as much as he hated to ask, that for any of them to move forward, Jasper's injuries had to be addressed. Something that would be easier if Jasper could face his friends without flinching. After a long moment, Jasper sat up, dropping his hands in his lap. His beautiful face was completely devoid of expression. He wasn't looking at Avalon. He was staring straight at the wall above Duncan's head. Duncan gasped and cringed back. But all Avalon could see was the same eye he'd seen before. The one that mirrored Jasper's other eye, except for the white iris. I'm not seeing any demons, and I didn't the first time Jasper was gracious enough to show me the extent of his injuries. Merlin, perhaps you could settle something for me, Avalon said with a lot more calmness than he felt. Duncan claims to see demons in the space left by my husband's missing eye, and Jasper has already said Luigi saw the same thing when he forcefully demanded to see the extent of Jasper's injuries. Jasper's magic appears to trust me, and when I look at that space caused by Jasper's missing eyeball, I see an eye similar to the one that is there, but just with a white iris, the way Jasper's original eye had apparently looked. What do you see? I see no semblance of an eyeball at all, just heavily scarred skin covering the space where the eye used to be. The evidence of what would be left when an eye is forcibly removed from its socket and someone has tried to stitch the remaining skin around it to cover the hole. Merlin twisted his hands in his lap, his face ashen. Consort, may I offer you my profound apologies for the behavior of my husband. I swear to you truthfully, Duncan is not a bad man. He is driven by a need to protect Prince Avalon, something he has done for many years, and the events of last evening are well beyond anything we've ever faced before. You can see evidence of the wound? Avalon ignored the apology. It would be up to Jasper whether he accepted it or not. I imagine the scarring Merlin sees is what is felt if anyone touches that area. I can feel it when I wash my face. Jasper's voice was still devoid of emotion. He stood up, his chin going up as he met Avalon's eyes. I know you asked me to work on staying in this marriage, but this morning's outburst is exactly what I feared would happen. And this is just after 5 days. People fear what they don't understand. It is why my eye was taken in the first place. The persons involved believed that because it looked different from my other one, it must have been the seat of my magic, the root of my cursed existence. Your friends and your crew apparently believe the same thing. I will not condemn you to live with the hatred and anger that is often directed at me. You deserve so much more than that in a consort. Avalon's heart lurched as Jasper bowed low and then straightened slowly. Your kindness will not be forgotten, Your Highness. I will remain in my quarters until you can set me safely on the nearest patch of land. Thank you. Jasper, please, don't go, Avalon pleaded as the man headed for the door. I don't want to lose you. If you go, let me come with you. Jasper's hand rested on the door handle. I can't let you do that, he said, still facing the door. Can't you see your friends are trying to protect you from the inherent evil I was apparently born with? How can a man who communes with the giant creatures of the sea be evil? Avalon strode to his husband, praying with everything he had that even if Jasper couldn't see the true heart of his intent, his husband's magic could. Don't you understand? When my Louisa was lost to me, I truly believed I would never come to care for someone in that way again. But then my father told me about you. And yes, I know when I went into our marriage thinking I was doing us both a big favor. I'm a crown prince. We can be arrogant idiots sometimes. But you have to know I don't think about you or our marriage that same way now. He rested his hand lightly on Jasper's shoulder, not to constrain him, just to have that connection. I haven't been truly living since my Louisa was taken from me. I have given the appearance of living, forever traveling, never finding a home or someone I could call my own, and telling myself it didn't matter because I didn't need it. But the one thing Louisa had that I missed more than anything was her love for life and her compassion for others. I see that in you. I have never felt so much joy or excitement or fear, admittedly, as I have in the past 5 days. The way you view the world fascinates me. The things you see through your magic excite me. I want to hunt down the people that hurt you so I can stand by your side as you have your vengeance. I want to hold you when your nightmares cause you to wake up shaking in the middle of the night. I want to stand between you and those who don't understand how amazingly unique you are, just so you don't have to be bothered by their weak and unintelligent responses. Can't you see? I just want to be with you. You can't change the world's opinions about me, no matter how badly you might wish it. Jasper's hand dropped from the door handle. In this world, magic belongs to crystals, pirates, and hill country tribes, not in a man considered a crown prince consort through hasty marriage. Even I know when being unique goes too far. Among society families, unique relates to an unusually creative hat or the way a person buttons their coats, not someone in an eye patch who can move threatening man mountains with their magic. That was particularly impressive. Avalon gently urged his husband around so they were facing each other. I have never seen Duncan so soundly thrown on his ass the way you did, and you never even touched him. Jasper, please. Moving slowly, he rested his hand against the damaged side of his husband's face. The white iris in the eye illusion swirled like a tornado. Let's work together to show people how wrong they are about you. What if we can't change their minds? Avalon caught the edge of hope in Jasper's tone and smiled. His husband wanted to live, and Avalon would see that he would enjoy his life going forward. Then you and I will live quietly and comfortably on this ship, or in some house somewhere, ensuring that the only people we deal with are those who understand how wonderfully unique you are. Crown princes are meant to live in the public eye, Jasper reminded him. When it comes down to brass tacks, crown princes can live exactly as they please, where they please. Say you'll stay. Please. Can I have my eye patch then, if you don't mind? Jasper's smile was small and still held a tremor, but it was a step in the right direction. Let's not frighten the crew who all believe I crawled into existence from the underworld. That won't help your cause in having me accepted by the people around you. Avalon arranged Jasper's eye patch over his head himself, making sure not to let the edge of the material touch any scouring Merlin had seen and Jasper clearly felt. There you go. Do you feel ready to go up on deck? Or shall we go back to my quarters and I can order some refreshments? He was determined Jasper wouldn't feel pressured after Duncan's overbearing behavior. He couldn't even look at his friends. Let's go up on deck, Jasper suggested. Perhaps you should let the crew know I can feel what they're feeling, and that might at least encourage some honesty in any interactions going forward. That would be a step in the right direction, don't you think? Chuckling, Avalon reached around his husband and opened the door. I don't think we can hide it from them that you are an amazing individual, that's for sure. Last night took care of that. Ignoring Duncan, still prone on the floor, and Merlin, who was hovering next to him, Avalon escorted his husband outside. The fresh sea breeze was a welcome reprieve after his friend's disapproval, but Avalon knew he was doing the right thing. Duncan and Merlin would either accept their relationship or not, but Avalon knew in his gut he was doing the right thing. Chapter 14. Jasper wanted to talk to Duncan, but the one time that he had mentioned the name to Avalon, Avalon had just waved him off, dismissed that Jasper's suggestion, saying the thick head would apologize when he was ready. He added, probably because he noted Jasper's quirked eyebrow, yes, Jasper thought that was a strange thing to say after the morning's behavior, that Duncan and Merlin had been close friends of his for a long time, which was the only reason Duncan wasn't facing charges for what he'd done. I hope you don't see that stance as me not supporting you, because you know I do. What Duncan did was totally unsuitable behavior, and you'd better not ever do it again. But I can assure you that once Duncan has processed what happened this morning, he will be sorry, and he will be man enough to say so, Avalon explained. Accepting that, because Jasper had no true idea of what a long-term friendship might look like, he nodded to show his agreement. Avalon smiled, letting him know that was the right response. But that didn't stop him thinking, perched as he was on the pile of ropes, looking out to sea. At one point, Jasper caught sight of a fin in the distance and remembered the affinity he felt with the creatures during his time in the water. Collective strength, he thought, and that concept hardened his resolve to do something about Duncan, but perhaps not in the way that Avalon expected. There had been one small incident with a crew member, but nothing overly concerning to Jasper. It was about an hour after he'd been sitting on the ropes when one of the younger crew, a guard perhaps, as was suggested by his uniform, hovered near where Jasper was sitting. When Jasper looked his way, the man bowed deeply. Forgive me for intruding, Your Highness, but can I ask, did you communicate at all with the creatures that were around the ship last night? Only there are those who saw what happened, who said it looked as though you did, and that those creatures prevented you from drowning. Jasper nodded. Hiding who he was and what he could do was no longer an option. Even the crew who had been asleep would have heard about the creatures and his midnight swim before breakfast. Do you mind me asking then, only I have always wondered, how they feel about us as men who walk on land, being on a ship in their waters. Did they say or did they give any indication? Jasper chuckled kindly. The smaller creatures appeared to be highly amused at my efforts to swim, seeing as it's not something I've ever done before, he said quite sincerely. But from the bigger creatures, the whales, I got the impression of incredible sadness. I believe that a lot of the times they follow the boats because they worry about the men on board. To them, any form of death, particularly if something happens to a ship, it saddens them. It saddens them that it happened in their waters. That's probably why Prince Avalon insists that we can all swim before we take a position on the ship, then, the man said, as if everything Jasper said had made sense. Then someone called his name, and with another bow, he left. Jasper smiled to himself as he looked back out over the sea. Maybe it does just take talking to them slowly, one at a time, to change opinions. Although Jasper knew that there would always be some that would consider him strange, even when he told the truth. As the afternoon wore on, the desire to speak to Duncan increased. The more he thought about the events of the morning, the more Jasper understood why the man had acted the way he did. Yes, at the time, Duncan had terrified and humiliated him, which was worse in Jasper's opinion. But he could see, as he watched the sea waves moving around the ship, that Duncan could be the key to a plan he hoped he was finally ready to set in motion. He got his chance after a couple of hours of being up on deck, when he noticed that Avalon was up at the wheel deck talking to Merlin. There was no sign of Duncan. He must be in his cabin, probably still processing things, as Avalon suggested. Making sure Merlin and Avalon didn't notice him leaving, Jasper slipped off the ropes and went down the narrow hallway to the cabins, knocking on the door of Duncan and Merlin's room. There was no reply. A crewman going past said, "Oh, Your Highness, if you're looking for the Duke, he's down in the brig." The question must have been evident on Jasper's face, because the crewman explained, "The brig is what we call something like a dungeon in a castle. Apparently he's done something to upset Crown Prince Avalon, so he's brooding in there." So much for processing, stubborn man. Jasper nodded his thanks before hurrying down the corridor the crewman had indicated, that led to a steep set of steps. As he went down them, he realized he had to be in the part of the ship underwater. There were stacked boxes along one part of a wall and some large wooden barrels clearly holding supplies. But the largest thing in the space was a cage big enough to comfortably hold a human, although the size was the only thing that appeared comfortable about it. Duncan was sitting brooding, just as the crewman had suggested, on the only piece of furniture in the cage, a narrow wooden bench that was barely big enough to hold his bulk. The only other items in the cage were a tray with food scraps and an unpleasant-smelling bucket, which Jasper ignored. As soon as Duncan saw him, he glared. "If you've come for an apology, you won't get it. I know what I saw, and I stand by what I did." Jasper shook his head. "That's not why I'm here." He went a little closer to the bars. "The only reason you acted so badly out of character this morning is because you genuinely care for Prince Avalon. Am I right?" "We've been friends for more than half your lifespan," Duncan said grumpily, just as Jasper had thought. "I understand that, and I can respect a man that holds fast to his principles and protects the people he cares about. But I'm concerned about something else, Jasper said. At one point this morning, you asked me what I was. Yes, well, it's clear you're no ordinary human, isn't it? Even if Prince Avalon didn't like me saying so. I didn't imagine those demons in your eyes. One eye, Jasper corrected. And that was my magic, simply reflecting back to you the horrors that you believe lives inside of me. As you surely noted, your husband and mine didn't see anything like the demons you did, which suggests more about your personality than it does about mine. Jasper left the comment where it lay. You mean you really don't know who or what you are? Duncan asked after a long moment. Jasper could tell he'd confused the older man. I am human, I know that much. Aside from my magic under my clothes, I'm just a skinnier version of you. Jasper pondered on how much he should say, but then he realized he had to take a chance if he had any possibility of a future going forward. I have ideas, snatches of ideas of something else, though. I'm sure you've already heard that after I was delivered back to the castle, after I was abducted, the reason I gave for never sending anyone after the people responsible was because they would threaten my mother. Not even the World Council could get it out of me, but my fear for the Queen's safety was and is very real. Duncan nodded. That's a standard technique used by abusers. To keep people quiet, they will repeat threats against the one person their victim genuinely cares about. They did do that. But the thing is the way the message was conveyed to me had me wondering. Jasper moved a little closer to the bars and lowered his voice. The people never referred to the woman as my mother. They referred to her as the Queen. Duncan's frown deepened. That's not overly unusual. You told Avalon that your parents were the King and Queen of Lowenthorpe. That's been recorded with the World Council. It's likely your abusers were simply reinforcing the severity of the stakes if you exposed them. Not just in that the woman was your mother, but that she was a ruler of a country too. Originally, I thought the same thing, Jasper nodded. Now they were getting somewhere. Tell him. I've never doubted I was a child of the late King and Queen, and I know for a fact that is what is listed on my birth record at the World Council. The man from the Magical University had a copy when he came to test me. The thing is, the more I think about it, the more I've been remembering about my time in captivity. Leaning as close as he dared, Jasper whispered, the people who took me made a very clear distinction between the person who birthed me and the Queen I was living with. I'm sure of it. If you recall, I wasn't abducted until after my father's death. I can't help wondering now if it's possible. Please wait a moment, Duncan said, putting up his hand. I am in enough trouble with your husband and my own, and I don't want to make that any worse. Are you implying there was a possibility, and I'm only saying this hypothetically because I genuinely do not want to get into any more trouble, but are you suggesting that your father strayed, and while you're your father's son, you are not your mother's? I don't know for sure, Jasper said. The Queen, the person I believe is my mother, she has never suggested in word or deed that I was anything more than her treasured third child. I always knew how much she loved me and cared for me. Always. When I was found in such a distressed state after my abduction, it was she who called in the healers. She sat by my bedside and personally cared for me until I could walk again. That took over a week in itself. It was the Queen who sent an urgent letter to the King of Sijan asking if it was possible the prince would marry you, effectively saving you from the fate you'd apparently condemned yourself to by agreeing to marry someone who only had ill designs on your person. I guess that to be the case. I couldn't think of any other reason why I ended up marrying Avalon that day. Gods, this is so hard, but Jasper's magic gave every indication he was on the right path. It has been plaguing me for a long time as to why there appeared to be such a clear distinction between a biological parent and the person who held the rank of queen in the minds of my captors. I've always believed they were one and the same person, but from the snatches of conversation that I heard during my captivity, it was clear the people who took me did not see things the same way. Jasper met the eyes of the man who was studying him closely. Duncan, don't you understand? I never expected Prince Avalon to want me to stay in his life the way he has indicated he wants to. I genuinely believed that as soon as the ceremony was done, he'd transport me somewhere so I could live quietly, and I'd be expected to make my own way in life. But he doesn't see things that way, does he? The man is far more attached to you than I imagined him capable of, Duncan admitted grudgingly. I can't be the one who would come between him and the first person he's cared about since his late fiancée. If it helps, I believe I can feel the same way about him. I mean, I have reservations, but that's only because the people who took me are still out there. I never understood why they didn't just kill me and be done with it. There are many times I thought I would die, but for some reason they wanted me to live. We need to go after those people and find out why, don't you think? Duncan nodded. Does that mean I'm going to have to apologize to you for my behavior this morning? I don't actually see the point, do you? Jasper said. You're not sorry. You've already said that. The point, Duncan said as he stood up, is because I promised my damn fool husband that I wasn't going to leave this brig until I had apologized to you. I also told him that hell would freeze over before I did it. For some reason, that made Jasper chuckle. I'm not sure even my magic could make that happen. But you could blame my magic or tell your husband I'm a persuasive person. Regardless, if we're going to go after the people that took me, don't you think it's you that Avalon would want by his side while he protects me? Because I know he trusts you to have his back. Duncan let out a long breath. The things I do for that man you married and the one I committed to my life to. He bowed stiffly from his waist, almost bent over at 90-degree angle, and then stood back up again. I offer to you my sincere apologies for damaging your person, humiliating you, and for causing you such distress, he said, unable to meet Jasper's eye. But Jasper's magic quietly applauded. Apology accepted, Duncan. Are you ready to get out of here now? I haven't said anything about this to Avalon yet, and I believe it would be easier if the four of us discussed this and made plans over dinner, don't you? Yes, Your Highness, Duncan said while Jasper undid the key and let him out of the brig. The bars were wide enough and the key had been left in the lock, so clearly Duncan had been capable of freeing himself at any time. A concept that made Jasper feel good inside because it meant his husband's best friend had principles. Jasper had a gut feeling that they were going to need those characteristics on their side going forward. Or at least his magic believed that, and that was enough for Jasper. Now to talk to Avalon. Jasper was nervous. He'd kept his silence for what he'd believed were good reasons. His mother, the Queen, was the only person who had ever shown him any caring until his marriage. He'd also gone into his marriage believing that he truly didn't have anything in his life to look forward to. When he didn't have a chance for a future, what did it matter if the people who took him were alive or dead, or even brought to justice? But Avalon had tied his future with Jasper's, and indeed it would appear he truly wanted him around. That meant Jasper had to protect him as well as his mother. And maybe, just maybe, Avalon with his friends and the troops on the ship would be enough to banish the threat that lurked in Jasper's sleep. It would have to be enough. Jasper's magic was sure of it, and Jasper's heart was feeling it too. If nothing else, being with Avalon infused Jasper with a confidence he'd never had. His husband's acceptance of his magic in the sea. "You're doing the right thing," he reminded himself firmly as he led the way back up onto the deck. Oops. And there you go, my friend. In case you'd forgotten what the title of the book was, it is A Marriage of Necessity, and it is another arranged marriage book 5. But as I say, it is a standalone. I hope you enjoyed that. The previous installments will be up here or in the card at the end. And yeah, there will be another installment next Saturday. If you're an author and looking for some writing advice, you can find that available on Mondays and Thursdays. And again, I have a long backlist of videos to help you with any aspect of your own writing career. But if you're just here for the story, then I shall see you again next week. And in the meantime, please have a lovely weekend, and we will see you then. Bye.